It is the Friday before Election Day, traditionally October Surprise Day. This is usually when you get your last-second news breaking that is supposed to shake up the whole race. I remember 4 years ago at this time, the bin Laden tape came out. 8 years ago, right around now, we had the DUI. As of this taping, now you may see this at a later time, but as of this taping, Mark, it seems like nothing. Am I missing something? Or?
No, there does not appear to be an October surprise. Either that or the McCain campaign gave the LA Times their only copy of the Khalidi tape.
That's what it seems to be, because they're very fired up about that. And you'd think, well, look, any Republican campaign worth its salt would be able to figure out to break into the LA Times, guys, do something. So disappointing. Maybe we can hold out a little bit of hope for a November surprise, but time, as Yogi Berra used to say, it gets late early around here. The last night, since we last joined you, Mark, you watched the Obama infomercial.
Yes.
I was very happy to be changing diapers at that time, and my son saved me from a half hour of my life I would never get back otherwise. What did I miss?
Not a lot, as Rachel Maddow now famously said about how he had her at the waving wheat because the first shot was a waving wheat. I literally had the exact opposite reaction. And the moment I saw the amber waves of gray, and I was just rolling my eyes and going, oh no, it's going to be one of these. Look, I mean, I can't really fault it in a lot of ways. It was what it was. It was this sell to middle-class swing voters and things like that. Aesthetically, it annoyed the heck out of me. I mean, all kinds of crazy soft focus shots of people, and the music was just, unbelievable. Just unbelievably syrupy music, like coming and swelling in and out of every scene, and just like I think I called it portraits of the downtrodden.
Yes.
It's just one middle class horror story after another, and there's a lot of people that are hurting in this country, and I don't want to downplay the significance of the problems they're going through, but the country is not one big breadline either, and we don't need to be making policy based on guilt.
I was going to say, it sounds like the Merchant Ivory version of the Grapes of Wrath. This kind of very very melodic impression. I'm glad you watched so that I didn't have to.
Well, unfortunately, Obama wasn't having an affair with the butler, so...
very good. Okay. That's going to start 1,000 internet rumors. So, please send email to Mark Hemingway at National Review. Now, Mark, you've also had on your radar screen perhaps one of the most easily overlooked but fascinating stories of this election cycle. That's what happened late in this election cycle, going on in Florida, you said.
Yeah. Well, I just recently I've been covering some stuff related to Robert Wexler down in Florida and his residency issues and some other things that his opponent is putting out there. It's real interesting because Robert Wexler's opponent is a guy is a Republican named Lynch, a businessman down in Florida, who has basically been running this campaign against Wexler with no help from the state party whatsoever, but he's really been punching above his weight in terms of opposition research. He broke a story on Bill O'Reilly earlier in the summer about the fact that Robert Wexler doesn't actually live in his congressional district. And not only does he not live in his congressional district, he doesn't even live in the state, which is a major constitutional violation. So that's been interesting, and you'll probably read more about this soon. He's noticed some very curious financial transactions by the Wexler campaign. But anyway, so I was working with I was speaking to the spokesman of Lynch's campaign, and he told me he was at this candidate forum the night before down in southern Florida at a synagogue in Boca Raton. And while he was there, Alcee Hastings, another congressman from Florida who's rather notorious, Alcee Hastings was
an impeached judge.
He was an impeached judge 20 years ago. Was impeached for perjury and bribery by the United States Congress. Later gets elected into the House of Representatives, and he was the guy that recently said that anyone who skins moose doesn't care about blacks and Jews.
That fellow, yes.
Well, anyway, he got in the face of his opponent last night after the debate, allegedly, after their candidate forum, and said he would, quote, take him out if he ever mentioned his impeachment again. And his opponent is no slouch. He's a black physician down in Florida. In fact, the former chief medical officer of the state. And the fact he's black really wreaks havoc in Alcee Hastings' usual race-baiting shtick.
I was going to say, Alcee Hastings, I guess the way he first got into Congress was by campaigning on his bribery and perjury, saying this is what qualifies him to be a member of Congress. And now killing someone for bringing up an inconvenient topic. I think he's going to be driving force behind the fairness doctrine in the next Congress if we see that.
Well, speaking of fairness, I should note that this is what his opponent is claiming. There's not exactly a plethora of witnesses this, but he did file a police report, and I think he is going to be filing a restraining order against Hastings. And given Hastings' past, it may not be hard to believe that this
It's not
occurred.
like Mr. Rogers did this.
No.
It's not like, oh, the Care Bears just knifed each other or something,
Yep.
Fascinating stuff there. That's probably the second most fascinating thing I've heard this week. The first came in Nevada, where obviously there's early voting going on in a lot of these states, early voting going on in Nevada. Massive amounts. I think it was, last check, 300,000 people had partaken of this already. There's a pollster in there with a firm called DNA that was getting the phone numbers of every registered voter who had already voted in the state, dialing the number of every one of them and saying, how did you vote? And I think it's one of those automated punch the code thing. He got 7,000 to respond.
Wow.
And in early voting, which is disproportionately Democratic, we're talking like almost 2 to 1, 1.5 to 1 proportions in the counties for Las Vegas and Reno, which have like 88% of the state's population. The first time he found Barack Obama up 50 to 48, and I talked to him yesterday, and he had a slightly larger lead. He had Obama up by about 8 points, but this is amongst a group that had 17% more Democrats than Republicans. So in other words, Barack Obama is running significantly behind the Democratic Party, party idea in this, and suggesting there's quite a few Democrats for McCain in Nevada.
Wow.
Now, maybe that's one of those states where you're going to get more culturally conservative, kind of, perhaps blue-collar, white working-class guys who just aren't all that sold on Obama and are willing to cross party lines, pull the lever for McCain. I don't want to take too much from that and project out from it, but boy, oh boy, if that's the case, a lot of these polling numbers are going to be dramatically different.
Let's hope that's happening in Colorado and Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah, interesting stuff. But it's interesting. Most people, most of the polling in Nevada puts Obama up, 7, 8, 9, 10 points, and we're seeing very different numbers. So it's one of those things where just something to keep an eye on. Early voting ends today, Friday, and so he thinks that by sometime over the weekend or Monday, he should have a completed set of the polling of the early voters. Should be very interesting stuff to keep an eye on. Finally, this is probably the last time we speak to you before election night. We will probably be talking to you sometime shortly thereafter or in the not-too-distant future. But Mark, we're a couple days out. What are you thinking? What are you seeing?
Well, I don't want to predict too much about what's going to happen Tuesday. Obviously, I still think that
we may get our November surprise.
Yeah, well, we may get our November surprise. Anything could happen between now and then. If we go ahead and play the odds and assume that there's an Obama victory, I'm basically expecting an orgy of self-congratulation.
Chris Matthews' leg will explode.
Yes. Right. It will just keep vibrating until eventually it gives way. So that'll be most interesting to me at that point in time. I don't think we're going to be too expected to see what happens in Congress, although I certainly hope Murtha goes down. It'll be real curious as to see how the media handles this, and what's that and how that bodes for things going forward. Because I had said earlier in one of these segments that I sort of expected the media to sort of return to doing their job, but I do wonder if the media will have so much invested in the Obama presidency that they helped create that could make things worse than I anticipate. And a good indication will be how they treat things on Tuesday night.
I am going to make, I guess I'm going to say a bold prediction. I'm just going to make an observation because look, it's Friday afternoon. It's possible something breaks over the weekend. It's possible something breaks on Monday that completely changes all this. But right now, I feel pretty confident saying going to be much closer than everybody expects. I can't go as far as to say McCain's going to win it. I know the listeners and viewers out there would love to it. But I think you look at the tightening in these polls. You look at these early voting numbers that I'm seeing. You look at the McCain camp gave a conference call today in which they said they think the voter breakdown in the electorate is going to have the Democrats up, 3, 4, 5%. Now, it was dead even in 2004. It was Democrats ahead by 3 in 2006, which was a terrible year for Republicans.
Yeah.
So, you don't always need a huge skew. But the polling this year has been putting most Democrats ahead by maybe 10%, 15%, really wild skews. If it's only 3, 4, 5, and even this way, I think maybe it's a little optimistic. Let's say 6, 7. We're not looking at an Obama blowout. And I really think you look at this tightening in a whole bunch of these key states, it's very easy to see Republicans saying, boy, if McCain had just been a little bit closer in this state, things could have turned out differently. That is my take at this hour. This has been Happy Halloween Friday. Thanks very much for watching.